Here we go in our second week of digging deeper into the core of the gospel according to Matthew. The core is the Sermon on the Mount. The core of the core are the Beatitudes, chapter 5, verses 1 to 10. Last week we discovered that the Beatitudes are the governing principles of life and following Jesus. The gospel was written to convince the Jewish audience to accept Jesus as the way of faithfulness. The Beatitudes are a succinct collection of the core of Jesus' teachings, the attitudes to live by. Be attitudes. Determine not only what one does, but who one is, their character. Now, this week we begin by considering the first Beatitude. Now, the common translation from the Revised Standard Version is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." You've heard that before. Then Peterson, in the Message, meaning for meaning, reads, "You're blessed when you are at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and His rule." Hadn't heard that one, have you? And then meaning for meaning in the native version, "Creator's blessing rests on the poor, the ones with broken spirits. The good road from above is theirs to walk." Probably haven't heard that one either. You see, these different understandings of this verse enables the reader to see that a poor spirit is a broken spirit, and a broken spirit is the universal experience of the faithful. Obviously, the teaching is clear that as a follower of Jesus, one's spirit can be broken. You see, poverty is the state of being broken. And spiritual poverty is the experience of darkness when the spiritual dimension of human existence is broken from the divine. It's in the experience in life when every door that one opens is dominated by tragedy. Darkness prevails with those who are poor, broken in spirit. Now, for the Jewish audience of the Gospel according to Matthew, this is a reminder of the book of Job. Every door that Job opened was broken. Indeed, it's the experience of Jesus himself, whose spirit was poor. His spirit was broken when he prayed, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" In the words of the modern poet, we aren't promised a rose garden. You see, the way of faith is not a rose garden. There are times of darkness, tragedy prevails, time in which there is a separation between the spiritual dimension of human existence with the divine. That connection seems to be broken. Now, many believe, teach, and preach that faithfulness avoids one enables one to avoid and escape darkness. That's not the first beatitude. The faithful experience brokenness and darkness. The first beatitude is that faithfulness includes time of darkness, and that there is a blessing in that darkness. The native version, the blessing is that when one experiences darkness, a divine road will appear. Indeed, the translation reads that the believer will experience the kingdom, the reign of God, making room for God when we experience that brokenness. The message is really fascinating, for it reads that when one thinks from the human perspective that they are at the end of the rope, total despair, they discover that the divine rope has no end. Think of that. Oh, I'm at the end of my rope, but the divine rope has no end. You see, the teachings of Jesus include so many references to spiritual brokenness, spiritual poverty, one of which is the story of the prodigal son who squandered his inheritance, returned home willing to be a hired servant. He was spiritually broken, but in his brokenness, he experienced a new road. He experienced heaven, the presence of God, and he experienced that even though he thought that he was at the end of his rope, he discovered that there's no end to God's rope of care, empathy, and sacrifice that he experienced from his waiting Father. You see, the experience of darkness, brokenness, is an experience of all of us. No person is excluded from this reality. To be spiritually poor is to be fully human, and to the blessing of hanging on to the rope which has no end. The blessing of finding a new road to travel. The blessing of God's presence on earth, heaven on earth. Life from the human perspective is often broken, but not from the perspective of divine agape love. For this perspective issues in an attitude of serenity, the experience that amidst brokenness, one is still connected to divine love. The natural human response to darkness and brokenness is vanity, vanity, all is in vain, all is empty. Those without faith do not experience the blessings of spiritual poverty, new roads, heaven on earth, and the endless rope of God's love. But the faithful have that attitude of serenity, able to focus beyond what is present. Serenity is that sense of calm and peacefulness, even as one is broken. That's the first beatitude. What a message to those who were living by the law, working hard to be clean, working hard to be pure. Do whatever the law requires of you, and you will be whole. Being obedient to the rules and regulations of the day. But serenity was the experience of Jesus as he faced his death on the cross. He discovered God's presence on earth. He discovered that God's rope has no end. Indeed, he shared on the cross the message of forgiveness and the message of faith. What a message for the faithful in 2023 today, who often, and sometimes all of us, fall into the trap of works righteousness, thinking that we can earn a relationship with the divine. Instead, the first beatitude is you don't have to earn anything except the gift that in the reality of brokenness, you will be blessed by a new road, a rope of love which has no end, and God's presence in your life on earth. The faithful know that we are never disconnected. We are never severed from agape love, even when our spirits are broken. We can live life with an attitude of serenity, looking beyond the brokenness and experiencing agape love. Yes, what we're discovering in this first beatitude is that the attitude of serenity, looking beyond our present experience, is part of the character of one who follows Jesus. To say there's a lot there is an understatement in that one little verse, but here's some questions for your thought and conversation. What is your response to the understanding that faithfulness includes the acceptance rather than the denial of brokenness, spiritual poverty? Secondly, what are your experiences of spiritual poverty in which the attitude of serenity was experienced in the discovery of new roads to follow, and that the rope of agape love has no end? Finally, is the biblical translation of meaning to meaning rather than word to word helpful or disturbing to you in your reading and study of Scripture? Thanks for being a part of our journey.